I just finished watching, uh, I don't know what to call it, Mr. Robot, the television series. Good or bad? I'd say the first season was great, and then the rest was shit. Literal shit. And season two was awful, season three was better, and season four was some weird, what I call an amalgamation of agenda driven tunnel vision gang stalking storylines. It was just all over the place, like sort of like how Wonder Woman 1984 was, to make a point to all of the people in the world that are getting tortured, quote unquote, um, during this COVID-19 planned epidemic, plandemic, and it was just crap. Um, so uh, in the end, and spoilers ahead for those of you, but I'm sure most of you gang stalking maggots really don't care. Um, for the ending of the season series finale, the last episode, uh, there is a face off between White Rose, BD Wong's character, against Elliot Anderson, right? Rami Malek's character, and it's sort of like how that scene goes down. A lot of how scenes go down in season four, and a lot of and less than, but a lot of not as much as season four, but in season three, how a lot of the scenes go down, which is that uh, cloyingly hypocritical, agenda driven, tone deaf. Uh, Preaching from the hypocritical soapbox, mongrel maggot soapbox of platitudes that come from maggots like you, and I'm guessing maybe Sam, the creator of the show, and or whoever is the gang stalking maggot or maggots that put these messages and make these messages happen in the show. Um, it, Cloyingly, annoyingly, just really kind of repulsive, vile. It's vile because the messages and the scenes and the dialogue is done cloyingly, clumsily done, and it's clumsily done because, to give you an example, it's like the face-off scene between White Rose and Elliot. White Rose starts laughing at Elliot because Elliot tells him, White Rose, that White Rose is the bad guy, and gives him a few reasons or whatnot. And then White Rose laughs and says, I'm on your side. I've been trying to build a better world. Saying he's the good guy, which clearly he's not the good guy. Anyone that murders indiscriminately with no remorse like that is not a good guy. Um, for those, people out there who think there is no bad or good, because I've met some of you maggots, um, to normal people, there is a good and a bad. There's an objectively, evil and hateful, and that is just hurting others and getting enjoyment out of it and not ever seeing that there's a problem with it. Keyword ever: enjoyment, sadistic, don't care, no empathy. In a world where people feel pain, sentient, very conscious people feel pain and tell you not to do it, and we don't want that. It's wrong. You, as a more evolved person, sentient being, knowing that another sentient being is telling you not to do it, should do that. SHOULD. Yes, should. In my opinion, it's more evolved, it's more civilized, it would lead to a better society, it would lead to a better earth. It would, and ultimately that's what we all want. We do all want, on a certain level. Again, I'm talking about the normal people here, not the Paul Spectors. We want a better world because I think if we had a better world, we'd all work together and we could save this planet, which we are absolutely obliterating. So you can't argue that this is not in your best interest, except for the people who are like Paul Spector being in that show, the other one with Gillian Anderson, where he says, let it all burn, which to some degree I can see a point to that. Not his point. He wants to let it all burn because he's angry. I'm saying let it burn because of the millions of children and women and men too who are in so much pain because of you maggots. I want to release them from their pain. That's my intention. I don't want them to suffer anymore. Every generation, there's a new generation of kids that are, abused, sexually abused by you maggots and your maggot ilk and your buddies and your girlfriend. Like, you just let it happen. You have the power to make it stop, but you don't stop it. And I don't even know what that pain is like, but I know many of you are screwed up because of that, and it destroys lives. That's what I've seen it do. It just destroys lives. There's nothing good about that. It does nothing to help anyone. So, anyways, they have this face off, and then White Rose, Zhang, his Chinese name in the show, laughs. He's obviously insane. He thinks he's the good guy, and because he's been working towards building this contraption that he thinks will create a parallel universe where everybody's happy, when all he has to do is stop killing and murdering to make things better. Anyways, that's the hypocrisy and the delusion from him. And then Rami Malek's character Elliot says, this goes on this, what I meant by cloyingly disgusting and ridiculous and hypocritical monologue, where he talks about how he has people in his life, his sister, that loves him no matter what, unconditionally, and no matter what he does, they will always love him conditionally. So, and then he looks right into the camera, which is, this is a gang stalking technique. There's a lot of technique used by maggots to do this, to talk directly to targeted individuals. And then he says, so I think this world, or I'm not paraphrasing here at all, but something like, I think this world is fantastic, great. I think this world is, for that reason, I think it's, salvageable or worthwhile. And so he says, and from all of us to you, fuck you. And right into the camera, he says, fuck you. So that's to me, that's to gang stalking targets. Because gang stalk, coming from a targeted individual, our lives have been utterly destroyed from a very young age. We've been harassed, and there have been different gang stalking maggots who interfere with our lives, maybe for fun or for jokes or just because they don't like what you believe in, or what you just did, or what you just said. Or maybe you broke up with someone and they relate with the person you were. Whatever the case is, it's pettiness. In the show, Mr. Robot, there is a scene and a theme about how evil people do things just out of pettiness, and that's it. And you can't believe how evil or hateful the action was, and it's over literally the evil person, the maggot's own failings. And so this face-off, he says this right into the camera. And so for targeted individuals, we get this. We have been targeted our whole lives by people with failings, insecurities, people who have not had their power checked ever, so they can just push a button or do this and hurt someone. There's a scene in Will and Grace in the new seasons, like not from way back then, but like the new ones that came out in season 2, I think. Karen there's like a joke, it's a targeted individual gang stalking joke, where she's looking at her phone and she's surveilling her servants in her house, or what she calls her servants, and pushes buttons to make them suffer, like turning up the heat or doing that. So these are all little clues. It's called predictive programming, of what maggot hacker types. I wouldn't call them hacker types. These people are very unintelligent. They're not like Elliot. They're not like Darlene in the show. I'm sure there's some that exist out there that are that smart. Something tells me, anyways. So they say this right. He said this right into the camera, and it's meant to say fuck you to the targeted individuals, and for targeted individuals, we're targeted for a reason. We're vulnerable. We're easy pickings. I don't even have to look at the demographic, and I would guess that targeted individuals. Well, besides the fact that you maggots told me that 75% of targeted individuals are women, about a couple hundred times during the beginning of this entire gang stalking, overt portion of the gang stalking that started happening, and you started showing yourselves in November of 2019. It was said to me on social media, hundreds of times. Did you know that 75% of targeted individuals are women? Well, unless you were lying, which you weren't lying about that, and so many other facts that were relayed to me in the very beginning in 2019, and other pieces of evidence that have shown this to me. Um, I can bet that it's mostly women, mostly minority women, and mostly poor minority women. And that it doesn't make sense logically to think that the people that are targeted individuals that are all women are bad people. It makes more sense that, you know, as history has shown, women of intelligence, women who are assertive, women who are poor, women who are don't fit into the mold, the typical mold of how women should behave, if they're in power, whatever it is, if we're not submissive, not popping out babies, and we're challenging egotistical man children, we get targeted, we get killed. That has been a common theme throughout time. And I'm talking specifically about women. This happens to, of course, black people too. And of course, in the black community, it's the black women, of course, that get that. And in the black community, the black woman who's poor and is to what these white racists, and mostly white racists, because a lot of gang stalkers are black, Asian, and Hispanic, but mostly white. The whites are the ones that own it all and started it all and created it all and have recruited of the worst ilk on this planet, and have also zombified them. But it's typical. It's the black, outspoken, loudmouth, as they like to call them, assertive women who are empowered, who don't act like other submissive, cooking and cleaning type women. And of course, this is not just something that I've pulled out of my butt, out of my ass, as they say. In 2019, November, I got a lot of honest tweets and texts about this, about how, and especially it was all from trashy men. I gotta tell you, trashy men who would show pictures of their wives cleaning or doing something, cooking, or talking about how they can make breakfast. Like, this is the kind of woman you should be. Tons of it, like inundated. So this is not something that is, some kind of guess or assumption. Anyways, to go back to that moment, when he's saying "fuck you," this world. I know what it's like in this world to have somebody that, this is Elliot Alderson's character, loves you no matter what. And so I think it's worthwhile. And so from all of us to you, fuck you. He says something like that right into the camera. And it's shit, because this is a very, very specific example of why you maggots are so deluded, why you are lost, why you have no empathy, why this is an example of how you don't have a perceptive ability. You don't have this astuteness to pull information and facts from even your own life, pull it all together, and from other people's lives that are different from yours, your own life, even your family members' lives, information that you read about empathy or about understanding others, everything about the world. Mainly, I think the issue is that you are psychopathic. You do not have the same levels of empathy, of humanity. I don't know exactly what it is. I always say empathy, humanity, compassion, kindness, but I also really think there is something wrong with your brains. I'm not sure. That's a guess. I don't have any proof of that. I just think that you're not like other people. I think there's something wrong with you, and these kinds of creatures or beings, entities, tend to be like you, very tone deaf, very selfish and greedy, very you don't care. You'll do anything to get to the top. You have the propensity to be very deluded. Things like this. You only are able to see things from your side of your point of the view most of the time. So how this works is, Elliot says that I know what it's like to have somebody who loves me, and that's why the world is worth fighting for. One other example is that the movie, again, to digress just a tiny bit, when the Earth stood still and Klaatu leaves and gives the Earth a chance to survive because he sees the love between Jennifer Connelly's character and her son. saying fuck you to a targeted individual or targeted individuals that have been, again, this has been told to me by you mongrel maggots, that our lives have been harassed, controlled, interfered with, sabotaged, just in general fucked with since the things that were said to me were, some of us since birth, some of us nothing less than 20, 30 years. So I never saw anything like where you've been the targeted individual for the last couple of years. It was always like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. In my case, a lot of what was directed toward me was, this has been happening since your birth. This has been happening. This is generational. We've knocked out whole generations of your family, things like that. And so if that's the case, and in my case it is that case, I've had my mother murdered by you mongrels. I've had my family separated and scattered, done purposefully, and many of my family members murdered, and my ability to try to bring my family together, sabotaged. And this is something I'm going to digress on in just a second. I met one of you gang stalkers, disgusting, just disgusting trash, like 99.9% of you. And I remember having a conversation. This is before I realized the gang stalking was really kicking in. I was really going through something, and but I wasn't sure exactly at that point if he was a gang. I didn't know he was a gang stalking maggot, and I made an offhanded comment because we were talking about families, because his family is screwed up and he's a horrible person, and I said, I wanted to bring my family together or something like that. Like, and he looked at me. It's the look on his face. This maggot's face was like, huh? Like, I can't show it to you. I can only go, it's at like your face scrunches up and your nose crinkles up and one of your eye crinkles up, and you pull your head back and you get like a double chin, and you're like, what? Like, real genuine surprise, confusion, and also a little bit of disgust, like, yeah, right. And that's that's the problem, is that you gang stalking maggots and mongrels aren't told the good parts, all the amazing parts of the targeted individual's life. You're only told the shit that needs to be told to you, so you don't give a shit and you can hurt that person more. Why? I don't know. I think it's part of the agenda. I think it makes it easier for those that have a tiny bit of conscience left. I don't know. The only thing I think of is it makes the process easier, because somebody up there, or a group of people up there, just make that decision that this person is going to get fucked over, and then you know the full dossier, the full information about targeted individuals like myself is left out. And I looked at this person and I said, yeah, I have tried so many times. I've even, spent money on, those intelligence things where you try to find your cousins and your family. And it was a goal of mine for a decade, more than a decade, pretty much ever since I left, my home. And that, along with dozens, hundreds of other examples where I look back and I go, that's why it didn't happen, because I was kept from having it happen. Like another example where I reached out to this guy who was building these little homes for the homeless. Like, I must have reached out to him 5 times, never got back to me, because I wanted to donate materials to help him build it. It was a cause that I wanted to get into, and I was like, why isn't he getting back to me? I'm emailing him directly. I've mentioned, I think I contacted him on Twitter, never got back to me. And the piece of shit mongrel in Boston, the Frank, who said to me, what have you done? What have you done? It's like it all ties together with the scene where, Elliot Anderson is telling, White Rose, hey, I've done this, I have this in my life, and that's why I think it's worth fighting for. Well, I would have had all of that too, and in spades and more. I would have given back. I know I would have given back and more. I would have had my family and people fighting for me and more. So it's not my fault that those things don't exist in my life. They're your fault. 100% your fault. For probably the vast majority of you maggots, you don't believe me. You think that I made my own choices to get me where I am right now. And you might be right. There's this tiny, tiny, tiny possibility until I know for sure, or we know for sure, when exactly my life was interfered with first, when when it happened and what was done and how often. That is the day that I will be able to say, well, I can take accountability for this, and I can take accountability for this, and I probably did make that choice, and I probably did make that choice. Because when you interfere with somebody's life over and over and over, like I have been told, you maggots have told me you have done this, then I don't how that it isn't logical to um you know assume or blame or expect that TI, targeted individual, to say, hey, even though you did all of these horrible things to detour my fucking natural path in life, it's my fault. These were my choices anyway. That's not true. I don't agree with that at all. Depending on, if you blocked opportunities where I was naturally interested in, passions, a career that I would have really, really just connected with and hit the ground running with and would have fit my skills and my personality. If you blocked that, and I have a memory of something like that happening when I was in my early 20s, when I was about 23, 22, and not just once, maybe a couple, two or three times. I don't think it was my choice. I was blocked from doing it. And there's so many reasons why I think I was blocked in doing it, and I'm not going to go into it, but I have a few other videos that talks about this, and that's the Twitter video and some other videos about how I'm zombified. Anyways, then my whole life from that point on, where you block that opportunity, the trajectory changes. It's like you're going down this path, and then it forks. There's a fork in the road, and off I go to the left instead of what I naturally would have done if I'd gone to the right, where I would have been happy and making money and learning from people around me who were better, and being it matters. Those things matters, and it might not even be such a huge decision such as an opportunity that was thrown my way. There's a reason why people believe in the butterfly effect. Breaking off my ability to get a job one place, or even meeting a certain friend, or my mother not dying. You murdered my mother. All of these things change the trajectory of a person's life, where they become a person that they would not have become before. And you can't do that and expect any sane person to take accountability for it. So, going back to Elliot Anderson saying, hey, we have this great world we want to fight for, we have all this love, and you don't, basically saying you don't have that, fuck you. Fuck you. No, fuck you, Sam, whatever your name is, last name. Fuck you, maggot motherfuckers. Fuck you for trying to attempt in your bumbling, clumsy, psychopathic, just ineffective, cloyingly obvious way that these choices are my fault, that my life is my fault, that I'm here because it had anything to do with me, or that I want to destroy the world, or the world's not worth living for because of some abstract, hateful rage. No, that's not it at all. I wish I could save all the good people in this world and get rid of all of you maggots, you delusional maggots, but I can't. That's not possible. All that has been happening in history is it's getting worse and worse, and you're hurting more and more people, while you're getting more delusional about how good you are, how godly you are, how you're going to create this, nuclear family society with Christians and godly people. But that's not what's happening. And I know you've been saying this and thinking this since the 1920s and 1930s, when the New World Order first came about, when that term was first started to be used by people in public, which if you search for it, you'll find it. And it's ridiculous. How questions that I ask myself are sometimes like, how do you deceive yourself so well? What is it about your ilk, your maggot mongrel network, that it's so easy for you to slip into this vile, barbaric, low intellect delusion? It's so embarrassing for you. That's what I think, and it really is. The world is screwed up and damaged in such a way and getting worse because of you. It's literally because of your hateful ways. And I just read Twitter the other day, and Noam Chomsky said something like, the more privilege you have, the more responsibility you have. And if you are literally the mongrels and the maggots that are controlling everything, that have your hand in the ability to make something work or not work, then, and all of you purport that you are, you idiots with your aprons and your skull tattoos, and while you're raping kids and stealing money and hoarding it for yourself and creating the events of the world and being decades, you have preparation, you prepare for it for decades in advance, and thinking that you're like these smart business people when all you are just, you're just cheating. Like, how do you, this, you're so beneath me. The only thing I can think of is you constantly say be self-aware and meditate and think about what you do for your neighbor and yada yada yada, but you don't embody those words ever. You don't embody those characteristics ever. And even if you did it a little, all of that would be canceled out by you sexually molesting a child, or torturing me, for a couple of years, which you've been doing, or raping a woman, which you are raping a woman if you technologically try brainwash her with your technology that you have now, that you can do that. You can affect people's emotions with technology. You can affect people's mood. You can affect people, with the technology that's been out. It's out there. All you have to do is Google it. It exists, and that's called raping. And making a woman think, finding out everything about her so you can woo her and turn her into your wife or your girlfriend, which I know you maggots, you insecure weirdos do. And all of this, like all of your behavior, and it's not just one tiny little thing, right? It's everything. It's your pilfering and your deception and you're pretending to be good people when you're vile and barbaric. It's the contrast. It's the vast contrast of the evil and the hate that you perpetrate versus what you say you are and what you do. There's a huge Grand Canyon gap between that. And then with all of that being said, then you try to say, oh, but you know what you need to do? You need to meditate. You need to think in the now. You need to be in the now. None of these things that you say, you ever carry out on your own. And so you look like clowns. You make fools of yourself. And it may just be to me and the tens of other thousands or millions of other targeted individuals. But what I know for sure is that other very intelligent, targeted individuals like myself, we are saying the same thing to you, almost probably the same exact way. I can't hear them. I don't know who they are. But you know that we are all in unison when we say this to you. So you can try your very best to make it seem like you're all these things and you're this great people, a great nation that has great values and principles, and gee whiz, we have to kill and torture these people because we have to preserve our way of life. You can do all of that. I get it. But you make me laugh. I know what you really are. I see through to what you really are. You're not Elliot Alderson. He's sort of an anti-hero. He is a vigilante, but he's nothing compared to you. I consider him normal. He never sadistically hurt anybody with torture. He never took away anybody's rights. He never enjoyed or raped anyone or hurt somebody or murdered anyone on purpose except this person in his mind, which is kind of different. I get that. That's okay. I get it. It's almost like a metaphor. But that's not you. You're murderers. You're liars. You're deluded. You deceive yourselves. You don't have to torture to get your point across. You don't have to sexually harass and use your technology to rape women and children. You don't have to do that. That's what you are. And in the end, when, Elliot Anderson is saying, fuck you, it just makes you look stupid because you're trying to say that I don't have that and I don't know what that's like, when that is the most bullshit thing gaslighting thing you could ever say to someone like me, that knows everything that I know, that has all the evidence right here, mountainous evidence, a fortress of evidence with you gang stalking maggots, destroying my whole life, murdering my mother, separating me and my sister, um, killing my whole family, separating me from them. I even try to reach out to them, and you sabotage all of that. Even with all of that, and the only friend that you allowed me to have, you only allowed me to have one friend in my entire life because you manufactured it that way. What happened with that one friend? Over a decade, over more than a decade, we got closer. We became more trusting of each other. We had fallouts and then became stronger friends after that. And in the end, the very end, when the overt gang stalking happened, again, November 2019, when I was calling this friend and telling him what was happening and I didn't understand what was going on, and then you turned him against me with your technology, or I don't exactly know how you did it. I think you did it with technology. He said he was having, all of a sudden out of nowhere, he's never had these before, having heart palpitations. He said he was having terrible nightmares, having like weird physical, like all this physical stuff happening to him, which of course is what you're capable of doing with the gang stalking technology. And the last thing he said to me before you affected him with the technology and you ripped him away from me, the only friend that I was allowed to have, is, "I will never give up on you." That's the last thing he said to me. "I will never give up on you." So that is the only friend that I was allowed to have, the only relationship that I was able to build on over a decade, during the isolation phase is what I call it, when I was separated from all my friends, purposely driven away from all my friends. It's a methodical move done over time, and in that friendship, we grew closer together. Our friendship just was very, very complex. We had fallouts, and then after the fallouts, we became even stronger. We trusted each other more. Talked about things that were hurtful to each other and fixed them, and it got better. And most importantly, both of us became better people because we were friends. And the last thing he said to me before he was affected by the technology, and the methodology to turn family members and friends against you, is he said, "I will not give up on you. I'll never give up on you." So the only friendship that I was allowed to have was a complete and utter success. And it was a friendship that was a relationship that was, by the way, thrown into my life to destabilize me. I'll just say that. It was thrown into my life to destabilize me. And it was like a lot of different things. It was, a lot of different things I got into were planned to make it look like I'm this less valuable person, or a troublemaker, or less of a woman, or less of a person, which never would have happened. It would never would have happened if it hadn't been for the gang stalking, for the decision to sexually traffic me, the decision to traffic me as a human being in this targeted individual network, for all the reasons that I have mentioned before in my other videos. So, I don't even try to go there. I mean, you can if you want, but it makes you look so stupid. Don't even try to go there and tell me that I don't know what it's like to have someone unconditionally be by your side. I know what that's like. And my mother was one of those people. And even though I wasn't that person to her, again, because of the gang stalking, but as I got older, more and more, I became more attentive. I was more loving, more working on the relationship. And I wonder what that relationship would have even been like if it hadn't been for the gang stalking. I mean, there's nothing, these are things that are in my mind and diluted. These are facts. You can look them up. As time went by, I started spending more time with my mother. I took her to the Hollywood Bowl, and I took her to museums, and I bought her dinner, and I had moments where we had fallouts too, where I demanded that we talked about things that were hurtful and things that happened in the past because we need to get past them. These are things done by people who care, people who are growing. And then, next thing you know, she's shot in the back of the head under some suspicious circumstances by you fucking maggots. So don't talk to me about the fact that I don't know how to build relationships, or that I am this horrible person that doesn't care or hurts people, or I know that's not true now. It is all your fault. And how dare you tell me fuck you? Fuck you for what you've done. Fuck you for trying to tell me that I'm all these things that I'm not after you've destroyed my life for so long. And the audacity that you have to even pretend that you're good people, with you have this knowledge, you have most of the knowledge, and yet you dare to point fingers at me? No, fuck you, you mongrel maggots. Fuck you. And fuck your show. Your first season was pretty darn good, but the rest was vile shit.